He begged me not to leave, and even made the ridiculous offer of giving me a hall pass. Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today I'm going to do a story titled, I discovered my wife, now ex-wife's affair the day she was admitted to the hospital. Now years later, she can't accept my engagement to my fiancé. And a shout out to Andy for sending this story. And guys, this is all about a guy who dumps his pregnant wife at the hospital when he finds out she was having a full-blown affair. And of course, divorces her. And now fast forward in time, he's now engaged to somebody else and she's losing her mind. Can't accept it, even though she was having a full-blown affair in this guy, And I thought it'd be a very good one to go over here, guys, to make the point, really hit this home here. If you're going to learn anything, learn this. Number one, do not be the white knight for the damaged gal. You're going to see early on, there are clear signs, at least signs to us, that she's got issues. She's had also an attachment to her, not just bad boy, but criminal ex-boyfriend. And when women are like that, and they talk about how bad they were and all these awful things I can't quite say here on YouTube, that's a sign to get out of there. Because guess what? They usually have an attachment to those types, and you're like the temporary guy, the nicer guy that they're picking, but that attachment usually lingers. And oftentimes they'll cheat on you with that guy if he shows like he's coming back or he's changing. And at the end of the day, guys, you may feel bad for these types, like they really seem like they really want help. Don't fall for it. Life is short, okay? Get a gal that is seemingly together, not messed up, have a damaged past, that type of thing. Because there's always some other white knight sucker to fall prey to that. So, starts off, says here, if ever there was a prize for the most horrible way to learn that your significant other was having an affair, I would probably win it and be its Hall of Fame. Like so many people in this sub, I suddenly found myself as a member of the club that nobody ever wants to be a part of. You can tell this guy's a good writer. And no, it's not fake. He can actually write. Imagine that. I'll never forget the sound of my ex-sister-in-law's voice as she kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over on the phone while I drove home from a week-long business trip. I was confused and had absolutely no idea what she meant, but only after I managed to calm her down to something that she had informed me that my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to hurry home. My mind went into overdrive as I tried to get more info as not crash the car while I was speeding to get there faster. The only thing she told me is that it was I can't say this word, but something physical happened, if you will, and then cut the call and wouldn't answer when I tried to call her again. Well, a little bit of background here. My ex and I met in our 20s. It was through a mutual friend at a barbecue. At first, she seemed almost too good to be true. Well, that's usually a sign that it is. Not only was she incredibly beautiful, but she was also shy and introverted. That's trouble. Always watch out for the shy, quiet ones. It took a while for us to officially date, but once it happened, I was over the moon. When we first tried to get intimate, she suddenly started crying. I should have taken that as a bad sign. They're getting physical, and all of a sudden she starts crying. Yeah, something's up. I freaked out and thought it was something I did, but she apologized the next day and told me she was triggered. As it turns out, 2 years before meeting me, she was in a long-term relationship and a guy that was abusive both emotionally and physically as well as mentally. Okay, that's what I'm talking about here. First the crying when they were getting intimate. Okay, that's a big sign, but now her talking about her past, abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally. Now, that's a shit. Now, if this is true, and actually turns out to be true, okay, nobody deserves that. But it's not your job to be the white knight, the savior, because this is going to bring you problems. Unfortunately, because she's so physically beautiful, Apparently, he would degrade her during their moments of intimacy and then apologize afterwards. She had a flashback but reassured me it had nothing to do with me, so we took things slow as she was still in therapy. Oh joy, she's in therapy. There's probably medication here too. Again, I don't wish anybody harm that's going through that, but it doesn't mean you got to bring it into your life. It was tough because I loved her, but I believe once we got over this, it would make our relationship stronger for a while, and it honestly appeared that way. How long were you together before you got intimate? And how long were you together that you started to say that you love her? I certainly hope it was a long freaking time, dude. Well, fast forward another year, and we'd gotten engaged. Smack! That's a little soon. The first time intimacy also happened during this stage. Whoa. The first time that he hooked up with her, because she's obviously damaged because of things with the ex. I smell BS here. I smell roping in the nice guy. Okay, they're not going to hook up because she's going to cry every time they do, so he'll be patient. That patient nice guy, not getting any nookie. And then, of course, he's going to speed up the proposal thing. I'm just calling this as I see it. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy a house for us, courtesy of an inheritance from my late uncle. Things were going great, and I have seriously suggested we plant a peach tree. This is very important for later in the story, to signify new beginnings, and she was all for it. We were wedded not long after that, and quite frankly, it was absolutely amazing. Well, let's just see how amazing it is in 5 minutes. Of course, we had our normal ups and downs, like every married couple, but I consider us more lucky because she always made a point to never go to bed upset with each other, and she'd always point out gently if I did anything to upset her. Okay, I'll give her that. That's a pretty good thing. Don't go to sleep fighting. Resolve issues before you go to bed. I mean, at least you can try, guys. Well, sometime later, life basically happened, and I was promoted at my job, and it meant more pay, but it also meant I would be traveling more for work, to conferences and business meetings. I noticed she had been getting down a lot more and wasn't being as intimate as before. She would also keep her phone close to her and even stop gently addressing things that upset her. Uh-oh, here comes the stereotype of being married. On the phone more, hiding her phone more, less SCX, less mentioning things that are upsetting her. Red flags, aside from all the other ones. Well, I tried to talk to her about it, but she assured me that she was fine, that this was a phase she was going through, and having no reason not to trust her, I let it go. Well, when a woman says something's fine, or it's fine, or you're fine, or whatever, no, there's nothing fine about that. This is when I should have started doing some investigating. Well, she would sometimes go to her sister's house and spend the night telling me she just needed a bit of girl time with her sister. The day I got that fateful phone call was the day she was meant to be keeping her sister company once again. Well, I remember rushing into the hospital barely breathing and frantically asking about my wife when the world's most understanding and patient police officer sat me down to explain what had happened. He told me he was a friend of my sister-in-law, and he happened to respond to a domestic disturbance call, and he arrived on the scene to find a couple fighting. This guy's probably like, and what does that have to do with me? The supposed boyfriend was on top of the female, hitting her, and she was screaming, trying to scratch him. Holy crap. This didn't make any sense to me because, number one, this had nothing to do with my wife because we were married, and number two, literally everyone who knew my wife knew she wouldn't do that. He gave me a knowing look and placed his hand on my shoulder and then told me to be very calm because he said girlfriend was actually my wife. Oh boy. Well, let's see. Remember her and her damaged past and the ex? If it weren't for the severity of the situation, I would have laughed in his face, but something in the way he said everything made me believe him. I then was ushered in by a nurse to see my wife, and what greeted me to this day, I still can hardly find the words to describe. I just stood there for what seemed like an eternity, and then a doctor came in and explained her injuries to me. The jaw, or her jaw, was slightly fractured. Her left eye was completely swollen shut and had massive bruising covering half her face, as well as 3 broken ribs. Oh my God. Nobody deserves that. That is effed up. I don't know what happened, but regardless. Then the doctor dropped another bomb and told me she was, wait for it, pregnant. I still couldn't understand how this happened. Then I caught sight of her sister. Her sister at first tried to avoid me, but at the persuasion of the police officer friend, she told me what she knew. It turns out that my wife's ex had gotten in contact with her 5 months ago. He was doing this redemption pyramid step thing where he would apologize to people he had wronged in order to clear his karma and anybody else, he says, is anybody else's BS meter going off now? They began talking more, and he convinced her to meet up for coffee and show her he was a changed man. Yeah, he's a changed man, and as she is in the hospital there, all beat up. Remember earlier when he was talking about how she suddenly was on her phone a lot and not as enthusiastic about being intimate and all that? All the signs were there. Obviously, old feelings resurfaced, coupled with the fact that he appeared changed, and now it soon developed into an emotional affair. My wife approached her sister with advice, who told her to take things slow and just get it out of her system if she needed to, which would lead to a physical affair 3 months later. So, the sister-in-law here played an active role in this whole thing. At the end of the day, his wife made the adult choice to cheat, but still, right there. She actually told my wife that she should at least make peace with her ex in whatever form it may be, and even offered to cover for my wife once in a while. I'd be like, bitch, get the F out of my sight. Well, that guy's really changed, and she's in the hospital and pregnant. And whose kid is that? My sister-in-law was in tears at this point and kept apologizing to me, saying that she didn't know about the abuse, as my wife never told anybody other than me and her therapist about it at the time. How about apologizing about encouraging her and covering this whole thing up? How about that? I was numb. I just couldn't feel anything and was absolutely dumbfounded by my wife's actions. Dude, you mentioned about, this guy obviously doesn't understand this. He doesn't understand about how women can get attached. This guy didn't just have her heart. This guy had her mind, and there's a big difference there. I'm sure some of you guys understand what I'm talking about here. When my wife finally woke up, I was there, and she burst into tears upon seeing me. I spent the following months in zombie flight mode. There was individual counseling for her as well as marriage counseling for us at the strong urging of her family. Hell no. Goodbye. In counseling, she was surprisingly forthcoming about how it happened and how she absolutely hated herself for causing me pain. Too little, too late, sweetheart. She mentioned how at one point on her way home from his place, she actually fantasized about driving into the river because she smelled like him and didn't want his scent to corrupt me. However, that made sense. In other words, she's trying to make the husband here feel bad for her. Take pity on her so he'll keep her around. She's just as full of shit now as she was before. She said she tried to end it, but it was too weak, and only after learning that she was pregnant that it actually woke her up and made her realize that any further contact with this man was toxic, not only to her, but to the unborn child, as well as hence went to end things in person for good when he snapped on her. Let's just say this is the truth. So the fuck what? Not that you could actually trust with anything she has to say. And it's like, I don't even know if that kid's mine. And you cheat on me this whole time and all that. And remember the beginning, they didn't actually have sex until they were engaged. I think all this was set up. She became a shell of herself and developed a phobia for any other males but me. At one point, she couldn't use the bathroom at night unless I was holding her hand. Sad, right? What? In the middle of the night, she couldn't take a piss without him holding her hand in the bathroom? I think this is a big show. Yes, there are people that are very traumatized out there. She's ruined her chance for any sympathy. I've done this too long. Well, after the baby was born, a son, by the way, we got a paternity test, and he was mine. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized I didn't hate my wife, I loathed her. I couldn't see with the woman I married, but instead saw her leftovers each time I looked at her. I decided to leave because I was afraid I'd do the same. I'd do something I'd regret and be exactly like her abusive ex. Who knows what was going on behind the scenes with the ex? I actually think her ex probably was definitely a scumbag. But still, who knows the shit she was pulling. Honestly, it sounds like they're perfect for each other. Well, she begged me not to leave, and even made the ridiculous offer of giving me a hall pass, as well as slapping her if I wanted to. What? This goes to show you she's full of crap. Number one, hall pass obviously shows that it's all about sex. Obviously, the loving isn't too important to her, but letting him slap her around, isn't that what caused this whole mess to begin with? How damaged and traumatized? Okay. Unless she actually likes that. I knew at this point I had to get out. She was actually very generous about during the divorce. She moved back with her parents and signed a very well thought out co-parenting plan issued by the courts. Okay, and you know what? I hope she gets counseling. I really do. Someone like this, who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but she's a big giant liar and drama and all this. I just don't trust her. But she can get help. But now he has a kid with her, and they have to co-parent. Moving forward 3 years later, I meet my now fiance by chance. I was in a bookstore with a buddy of mine, and we were discussing Egyptian mythology when this beautiful woman approached me to correct me on my pronunciations of the Egyptian gods and cities. I'd be like, lady, private conversation. If I want to call Anubis Anubis, then so be it. God's sakes. Needless to say, immensely impressed by not only her understanding, but also the fact that she is Egyptian herself. Well, in that case, you better say the Egyptian gods and goddesses correctly. It's her culture. We exchanged numbers, which eventually led to us dating, and when I finally proposed to her, it was actually in front of the peach tree I had planted years ago. The peach tree mentioned earlier he planted with his wife. I got down on one knee before I got my answer, and she ran to the house and came out with a ring as well. Turns out she was actually planning on proposing herself because she was madly in love with me and just didn't want any other woman to have me. My son, in all his sweet childlike innocence, told his mom what happened because he was present when it happened. Oh, let's see how she behaves with this knowledge. Well, my ex Lily showed up that night in the rain yelling about how could I propose to her, my fiancé, in front of our tree, and that isn't the end of us. Psycho. Hello, police. I got a crazy bitch here in the backyard. How can he propose to her? He's moved on. They're divorced because of her. Back to therapy. Is she off her meds? Good heavens. I'm completely exhausted at this point. I cannot go no contact because she is the mother of my child, but she's basically harassing me and my fiancé. How do I convince her to move on? To get over her fear of men and not force me into a restraining order? Sorry this is long, but I am really desperate. Holy crap. Well, to answer that question, honestly, I'd be trying to get full custody. Trying to see if it can be proved to the courts that she's unstable, that she's not fit to be a parent, or to, and if she is going to see the kid at supervised visitation, I'm sure she'll lose her mind about that. But seriously, with all this, no freaking way. That's what I think, honestly. Go to his lawyer, the family law attorney that helped him before, find out what can be done here, and that's that. But if you can't get the restraining order, again, can't get full custody, I would maybe perhaps talk to her family if they're reasonable and see what they can do about the whole thing. But that's the worst part. Having to raise a kid part-time with a nutcase. So anyhow, guys, that's the abrupt ending here. Good for him. He moved on and he found somebody, hopefully, that's not nuts. But let's remember here, the gals that are damaged, and there are ones out there, whatever happened, I don't want anybody damaged, it's not your job. Don't have your life go into hell in a handbasket because you feel like you got to be the hero. And at the end of the day, guys, there's always some sucker out there that's going to play the hero role. And, it's going to happen to them. And also, it's a story as old as time. The woman falling for the bad boy, the damaged guy and everything. And then it gets too bad. They leave, find a guy like this, and that guy comes crawling back and saying how much he's changed and he's so sorry and he only you can make him a better man. And the next thing you know, boom, he hasn't changed at all. Look what happened here. I mean, that's terrible what happened. I don't know what happened between those two, but holy crap. So anyhow, guys, there you go. But fortunately, this guy, found somebody better, moved on, all that, and that's that. But hey, I have no problem. He ended it with her. I think that's good. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And, guys, you find a good story, send it my way, strongsuccessfulmail@gmail.com. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.